And the first item in the tree is users. And if we click on the plus symbol to expand it open, we currently have one user programmed in the system. If we double click on that user, we can expand it open to full screen. And here we can change the name of the user. We can change their 4-digit code, which by default user 1 in all the M1 system is 3456, but you can change that to another 4-digit code. And we have the capability of assigning the 8 areas up to that user, as well as the user authorizations. And you can see here we have user 1, and he is set up, his user code is valid in all 8 areas. This particular user has ARM, disarm, bypass, and master capabilities. Now if you would like to create a new user, highlight users with one click, right click on user, and we're going to create a new user. From the box, number of users to create, we're going to do 1 for right now, and we're going to start at the first available user, which is number 2. So I click OK. And we can either use custom values or we can copy from another user. So if you're creating a number of users that have basically the same ARM, disarm capabilities, you could always copy from one template to set all those up with the same options without having to recreate each one. In this case, I'm going to use custom values. We'll click OK. Now I'm going to give my user a name, and later on we're going to be going over rules, and so I know we're going to have an access user. And we're going to say he has access credentials. And the only options I want for this user is access. Now, if I were connected to a system right now, I could click the send to control and send this information for user 2 to the M1 system. On second thought, I think I'll give this user a code instead of using a prox card or a fob. So in this case, his code is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So at this moment, we have 2 users created in the system. We have a regular ARM disarm, and now we have an access control user. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Amy, and she's going to go over some additional features of the RP software.
Thank you very much, Brad. So we'll just dive in now that Brad's gone over the users. We'll just go into areas. Now the M1 system can have up to 8 areas. You may also hear that referred to as a partition. In the central station realm, that may be an account. But basically what that allows you to do is separate the system into different areas or partitions that can be armed and disarmed independently, could be reported under different account numbers, and just allow separate operation of the system. So this may be good, say, for a residential application where you maybe have a detached garage or a workshop and you want to have that covered separately, or if we're talking about a commercial application, it could be a small strip mall or something like that where you have several stores and you want to have them separated that way. So different areas again can be armed and disarmed separately, and you can have zones assigned to areas and keypads assigned to areas, and we'll show you how that works. But here's the expanded view of the areas. You can see right now we only have one area. Similar to the users, if we want to add another area, we're going to right click on areas when it is highlighted and choose new area. Then we can select how many areas we want to create and what number to start at. So we'll create one new area and we'll make that area 2. And we want to use custom values. You could copy from area 1 if you know that a lot of the settings are going to be the same. You can use that copy option. We'll go ahead and use custom values. And so now we have the Area 2 screen here, and we're just going to go ahead and say this is a workshop. And you can see in the Areas section of programming you have several different options here related to the entry and exit delay times. So we have the entry 1, exit 1, entry 2, and exit 2, and those apply to different zone definitions, which I'll show you here in just a moment. But the idea there is that you may need more time to get in or out a certain entry-exit door than you need for the other doors. Let's just say, for instance, a garage door might be a good example there, where you're going to need a little bit more time to get out the garage door and get it closed before your exit time expires. So we can have that extended and assign that as an entry-exit 2, whereas the front door can still have those normal shorter times. So you can adjust the times here. We'll go ahead and make this, you can either type in your information there, or you can use these arrow keys to adjust the setting there. So we'll expand entry exit 2 for area 2 to be longer. There are some other options here related to arming. The auto stay mode after exit time if no violation, which you'll find here, what that does for you is if you have that option set and you arm the system to away mode, but you do not violate an entry exit zone during the exit timer, the system assumes that you did not leave, and then it reverts to stay mode instead of away mode. And so that's to help with false alarm prevention. So that's, again, a feature that you can enable here, or if you don't want it to work that way, you can leave that box unchecked and leave it disabled. The restart exit timers option allows you to basically restart the exit timer once and once only. This could be good if, say, you just got out the door, you realize that you need your umbrella and you want to go back in and get it. So you can press the exit key again, and it will restart that exit timer, giving you the extra time that you need without having to go through the process of disarming the system and rearming it. This can also be good when the system is already in an armed state. Let's say you're armed to the stay mode and you need to let the pet out. You could press the exit key, and that would start the exit time again, allowing you to open the door, let the pet out, and then repeat that process when they need to come back in. But so that's a good option in those certain scenarios. Sound keypad after closing report, that's fairly self-explanatory there. It's related to user opening and closing reports and whether or not you want to hear a tone from the keypad when that closing report is sent. The next two options relate to the exit and the stay keys on your keypads. So if you have single key press quick arm selected, then a single press of the exit or the stay key will arm the system. With the exit key, if you press it twice, you're going to be armed in vacation mode, which allows you to do some things with automation. We'll maybe be able to show you an example and a rule of how you can use vacation mode later on. When you press the stay key, it's going to arm to the stay mode, and then additional presses of the stay key will scroll through the different options you have selected here in this stay key scrolling area. So the system has 6 possible arm modes that may be a little overwhelming for some users, or just they're not going to make use of those other arm modes, so you can actually disable those so that they don't see those and customize the system for them that way to make it user friendly. If you have the double key press quick arm, it's the same operation. It just requires 2 presses of the exit key to get that initial arming, or the exit or the stay key, to get that initial arming to occur, and then you still have the same scrolling capability with the other modes. Now you can have both of those options unchecked, and the exit and stay keys will not arm the system without the additional entry of a user code. So that's an option as well. You can see when you go back to areas, again, you've got kind of an overview of all the areas, and you're going to see a lot of similarities in these different categories in the software and also the way that it works. And so the next thing we'll talk about is keypads. Again, you get an overview when you click on keypads. You can expand the tree out to go to keypad 1, see all the options for keypad 1, and then adding another keypad is the same as areas and users. highlight keypads, right click on it and go to new keypad, and then you can add new keypads to the system using those same steps as we've seen before. So we're going to name this keypad Master Bedroom. And you've got some different options here. Some of these options are related to what gets displayed on the keypad, these show options. On the bottom line of the keypad display, it can show you the date and time, it can show you the area name, and with certain models of keypad it can show you the temperature. Now, not all of the keypads that we offer have an internal temperature sensor, specifically the M1KP and the M1KPB are the two keypads that we offer that have the internal temperature sensor. And so if you have that show temperature option selected with those keypads, it's going to display inside and then the temperature reading of that particular keypad. If you don't want to see any of those particular things, you can uncheck them and they will not be displayed on your keypad. There's some other options here related to the sounds of the keypad, and being that this particular keypad is in the master bedroom, I may want to have that be silent on exit delay. I don't want to hear when I'm in the bedroom that you know, my husband who leaves before me has left and armed the system. I don't want the keypad beeping. So we can go ahead and make that keypad be silent, and you do get to have that option per keypad. So you know, the keypad in the kitchen or in other parts of the house can go ahead and make those entry and exit beeps, but you do have that separated as exit and entry, so I may want to hear the entry delay to know that someone's coming in. So you can customize it that way. The system has a chime feature, and when that chime feature is in a tone or a tone and voice mode, the keypad will beep or emit a chime tone when a zone is violated that is a chimes enabled zone. So again, this being in the master bedroom, maybe I don't want to hear that. Even when the chime's turned on, I can select to suppress those chime tones. And again, that only affects the sounds that come from the keypad itself. If you want the keypad to go dark after there's no activity, you can select this option, and you know, 60 seconds after your last button press, the display will go dark. And again, that since this keypad is in the master bedroom, I think that's a good option. You have options here related to the backlight level and the tones and volume from the keypad, so you can make those adjustments here. And then finally, we've got the F key section. Now, the number of F keys that are available on any keypad varies by model, and so you either are going to have keypads that have 6 F keys. Some of the keypads have 4 F keys, and like our little arming station, while it doesn't actually have an independent key for all 6 function options, it has a key labeled F, and so you can press that key and then 1 or 2, you know, the number of the function that you want to activate, and that gives you 6 F keys on that arming station. But this is how you define what those keys do. You can see here we have our standard panic, fire, police, and medical. That's going to be the default options for the F1, F2, and F3 key, although you can change those to be whatever you want them to be. We have here in the F4 section, I'm going to show you here, we could define this as an automation task. So then we can write a rule that tells the system what that task is supposed to do, and we can easily activate that task from this key. We can also write rules that just say when an F4 key is pressed on this specific keypad, then do something. So you can, in that case, leave it at disabled, and then the rule is going to tell it what to do. So you've got a couple of different ways you can go about doing that. But that's the activates event. Now you also have the illumination event, which affects the backlight of that particular F key and when that comes on. So you can see here with the standard panics, it's following that alarm type. We could have this F key follow the state of a zone, follow the state of an output. I'm just going to pick a zone here to have it follow. You can see there's a lot of different options that we can go through here. So I'm just going to pick, just want to pick zone 1 here. So we're going to have it follow the state of zone 1. So that means that any time that zone 1 is open, this key is going to be lit. Now if we wanted it to work the opposite of that, we wanted the key to be lit when the zone was closed, when it was normal, then we can choose the invert light option. If we would like for the key to blink instead of just being illuminated, you have the blink light option. You can cause the key to require a code before it will perform its designated event. And you can choose whether or not the key is a single press, or if this is left unchecked, it's going to either be double press or press and hold. Now the name that you enter here is what you're going to see on the keypad when you press that button. So that's just a helpful way for your user to know, yes, I activated the function that I wanted. It's also helpful if you do have the single press unchecked. When they press the button, it's going to show up so they know, okay, yes, that's the function I wanted, and it instructs them at that point to press the button again or press and hold. You have the option here to assign the keypad to a particular area. Now the keypad can only be assigned to one area. There's not an option for the keypad to be a global keypad controlling all areas or be assigned to multiple areas. So the keypad does operate the area that it's assigned to. There is a menu in the keypad that would allow you to make a temporary reassignment of the area, so that you could take an Area 1 keypad and temporarily make it operate Area 2 and display Area 2 information. And then, after you walk away from that keypad and 60 seconds after you've made the last button press, it would revert back to its permanently assigned area. So there is a menu there to allow you to get into other areas from a keypad, but the keypad itself has a primary area that it's assigned to. Each keypad, with the exception of the arming station, has a zone input and a 12-volt 50 milliamp output available right off of the keypad, and that can be convenient for certain applications where maybe you forgot to pull wire to a door, or it's just easier to get it to the keypad, or possibly even an access control application where you want to use the keypad code inputs to activate the output on the keypad to trigger a relay for a door lock or that sort of thing. So the address of the keypad directly affects what zone number and what output number will be assigned to that keypad's input and output, and this screen gives you a little helpful hint there indicating that keypad 2 is going to be zone 194. Now that also means that the output would be 194 as well. Let's get into zones. You're going to have your hardwired main board, and you can see here's the default programming for that. I'm going to just go in here and just type in front door, and we can leave that as an entry-exit zone. You have a lot of different options here related to how the zone is going to function. A lot of this stuff is fairly self-explanatory. If there's something there that looks like you may have a question about it, just type in your question and we'll address that. But I think a lot of this is self-explanatory. The difference between bypassable and force armable. A bypassed zone is completely ignored by the system and will remain bypassed until it is either unbypassed or until the system is disarmed. But if a zone is force armed, that means that the system will allow itself to be armed with that zone open, although it does indicate ready force, the ready light blinks instead of being solid. But what happens when that zone goes back to a normal state is it actually comes back into the alarm loop and is capable of creating an alarm after that initial changing state from not secure to secure. So that's the difference there. We have a place here where we can put in a voice description for each zone. So if I want this to be front door, I can actually just start typing that in. You can also look through the list of options through the drop-down menu, but again, it's a lot easier if you just start typing. You'll see the words that are in the list that match what you've put in. So we can make that say front door. And that way, when we have the chime in the voice mode, if we do have the chime enabled for this zone, then we're going to hear front door instead of zone 1, which is a much more concise message for your customer. Again, if you right-click on zones inputs, that's how you're going to be able to add new zones to the system. You can add hardwired or wireless zones depending on what kind of expansion devices you have connected to the M1. I'm going to go ahead and show you the wireless, and we're going to set up a wireless group. Now you can set up the wireless group wherever it makes sense for you. If you wanted to skip over some spaces, depending on which kind of wireless you have, that may be an option. But with the Elk wireless, and for our example here, we would want to start at zone 17. Which is group 2. You'll notice that these zones come in without default programming, so they're all disabled by default. You will need to go in and change those. So let's just say this is a key fob. We're going to say this is Brad's key fob. And here we can define the zone as a key fob, which is definition 15. We can decide what area the zone is assigned to. We can also set the type for the zone. Let me just pick this and show you these different types that you can have for most zones. If you're going to have an end-of-line resistor, or if it is a wireless zone, you're going to leave it at type 0. But if it's a hardwired zone that does not have an end-of-line resistor connected to it, you would want to choose normally closed or normally open. This is a wireless zone, so we're just going to leave that. And again, I want to define this as a key fob. Have all the same attributes, voice description, information, that sort of thing. But on wireless zones, we do have this wireless setup button. And that allows us to set up some information for the wireless zone. You have different supervision options. Normal supervision is going to apply to most everything, except for smoke detectors and that sort of thing, which would fall under fire supervision. And since this is a key fob and we will be taking it with us and it will not be within range of the receiver all the time, it should not be supervised so that we don't get an erroneous trouble message about the key fob not being close enough or within range to the receiver and checking in. We don't want that to be supervised. We can assign a user ID to this, so if we want this to be logged as user 1, then we can enter that user ID and that will log as user 1 when this particular key fob is used. You have a place for your TX ID, which would apply to GE or ELK sensors. DL would apply to GE sensors, and again, they may actually be labeled TX, so really take a look at that label and decide which field you need to put that in if you're looking at GE sensors. Or for Honeywell sensors, you have the HID field. And those are the 3 different wireless options that we have: the ELK two-way, Cadex, or ITI, GE format sensors, and then the Honeywell 5800 series. So again, focusing on the ELK wireless, you would definitely put your ID number in the TX ID field, and then you would also need to set the loop number here according to the instructions for that particular sensor. We're going to go ahead and set that to loop 1 here, and then once you've entered your ID number, this enabled checkbox will become checked by entering that ID number, and you'll want to click Save there, and of course if you're connected you can send that to the control. Now this wireless setup only takes you to one particular section of wireless setup. We actually have a category here in our folder items list called wireless setup. So if we go to that, you can see we have an overview of the transmitters. On the receivers tab, you basically here just have some options that sets either the normal supervision and the fire supervision time windows. That's really all you're going to find there, but if you needed to make adjustments to those, you can do that. The main thing I wanted to show you here in this wireless setup is your key fob events tab. This is how you tell the key fob buttons what they're supposed to do. So by default, you're going to have arm away and disarm for your button 1 and button 2. You can assign different functions to the different buttons of the key fob here. Let's say, for instance, I wanted button 4 to be a panic button. I could go ahead and set that up as a police alarm, and that's going to give me a panic button. You also have the option here for automation tasks if you wanted to do that. You can set an automation task for the for the key fob button as well. And similar to F keys, you can just write a rule that says whenever RF button 3 is pressed, do something. So in that case, it's okay to leave that button set as disabled. The next thing we'll talk about is cutoff timers, and cutoff timers actually determine how long the siren is going to go off in the event of an alarm. So you have different options there for the different types of alarms. And you can see the default setting for most alarm types is 600 seconds, which is 10 minutes. The value that you see there for the fire duration, the 65535, that is, as far as the M1 is concerned, infinite. That means that for a fire alarm, the siren is going to go off until someone acknowledges it and silences it at the keypad. Let's say you have a situation where you're using some medical devices and you don't want the siren to go off because that may be agitating to the situation that caused the alarm. So in that case, it's okay to come in here and set a cutoff timer to 1 second, which is going to completely suppress the siren output but still give you your display on the keypad, your beeps on the keypad, logging of the alarm, reporting of the alarm if you have it set up for that. So value of 1 second is just going to suppress the actual siren output. And we're talking about output 1 and output 2 here on the main board. I'm going to go over the globals here, and I'm just going to hit a few high points in the globals. There's a lot of information here, but just to take a look at telephone remote control is something that's built into the M1 Gold, and if you want to make use of that, you do need to set here either local or local and remote control to allow that feature to work. You can see we've got some options here for the time, date, temperature display, the country that you're using this in for the telephone interface, whether to observe daylight savings time, those sort of things are found here. We've got an option here for your zones that refers to the loop response time. Most zones are going to be responding at the slow loop response time, which it's 400 milliseconds, which is not exactly slow, but it's slower than our fast loop response time, which is 40 milliseconds, and you can make adjustments to these as needed. If you have zones in a cross-zone pool, you can make those options here as far as the time frame for the cross-zone and whether zones can self-verify, meaning 2 trips of one zone in the cross-zone pool would create an alarm. And this is an interesting option that people ask about a lot, the audible system troubles. Now, if you have a low battery, AC failure, phone fault, those kinds of conditions cause the keypad to beep when those trouble conditions occur. If you would like to suppress those beeps at the keypad for the troubles, then you can uncheck this box, and that way the keypad won't beep. The trouble is still going to be displayed on the keypad. It's still going to be logged and reported if you've set it up to do that, so it doesn't suppress the trouble from occurring. It just stops the beeps, which can be great if you have an issue where you maybe have a power outage and there's a low battery in the middle of the night, or maybe the customer has some issues with their phone service and it's going down for just a few seconds. You don't want that waking them up in the middle of the night, so you can just keep the keypad from beeping. On the Output 1 tab, you have all of your different volume level settings, and you have initial alarm and maximum, siren, and voice alarm. So if you have the initial set to 1 and these others set to a higher value, then what that's going to do is allow the volume to slowly ramp up over time. Instead of just starting at full volume, it's going to start at the lowest volume level, and over a 90-second period it's going to increase to the maximum level that you have set here. It's kind of a peacekeeper feature, so if it's a false alarm, an accidental trip of the alarm, you can get to the keypad and get it shut off before it's going full blast. So there's also an option here for your non-alarm voice messages, which would be like your chime messages, systems arm, disarm, that sort of thing. Output 2 by default is set up to have a speaker connected to it and use an onboard siren driver, but if you want to use a separate siren driver or a self-contained siren, you can change that to voltage out, and that way it will be a voltage output for that self-contained device. On the G29 through G42 special tab, there's a lot going on this screen. You see some options here for two-way listening. If you're going to be using that telephone remote control, you need to have the system set up to answer the phone. So you need to set the rings until answer here. If there's a voicemail box from the phone service or an answering machine, that sort of thing, you're going to want to set this to a value higher than that particular option, and go ahead and enable the ring hang up answer. That's going to allow you to dial into the panel, let it ring once or twice, hang up, wait a few seconds, and dial back in, and the panel will answer on the first or second ring of the second call. That'll allow you to get around the voicemail or the answering machine. The serial port 0 baud rate here is important for the Ethernet interface, and you can see the default setting there is what it needs to have. This can also be key in integration with third-party devices that are going to be connecting through the serial port, so you can make baud rate adjustments to support the device that you're going to be connecting to the serial port of the M1, and we refer to that as port 0. There are also some checkbox options here that determine what will be transmitted out of serial port 0, and again, this affects things like your M1-to-go software, your smartphone apps, your third-party integration. So if you want to have all of that information being pushed out the serial port, you want to make sure that these options are checked here. And the Ethernet interface, if you're using that, and again, talking about the M1-to-go and the smartphones, it connects to the main serial port, and all of the data that is being transmitted out of that serial port gets passed through the Ethernet interface unchanged for your integration. So these options affect the communication with third party and also with our M1-to-go software. Even when you're using the Ethernet interface, it's still connected into that serial port. The local programming code is your keypad installer code. So you can see here's the default value 172839. Should you need to change that, you'll find that option here in Globals. The next thing we want to do is talk about telephones. And so again, I'm going to create some new telephones by right-clicking on telephones and choosing New Telephone. I'm actually going to go ahead and create 3 telephones, and I want to start at number 1. So you can see once I've done that, now I have these 3 different telephone entries. I can go in, this can be my central station, and I'm just going to make up a number here. That's a completely fake number, don't call it. You can then choose your reporting format. I'm going to select Contact ID, that's a very popular reporting format. You can select what is going to be reported using this particular method through these checkbox options. And then we can set the account number, and you'll see there's a separate space for an account number for each of the 8 areas, so that if you have a partition system, it is possible to report that under different account numbers. The account number must be entered as a 6-digit number, so we're going to go ahead and put in 2 leading zeros when we have a 4-digit account number. Hop down here to telephone 2, and I'm just going to make this a central station backup, and again a completely made up number there. Selecting my reporting format, dial attempts, the things I want to report, my account number, all of this information is going to be similar or the same. And once I've set up my backup and put in all the information that I need, I can go here and select Report as a Backup, and you'll notice that all gets grayed out and locked in. It also locks in telephone 1 so that those are associated with each other. Now for this one, I'm going to put in a cell phone, and so we're going to call this Brad's cell, but again it's going to be a completely made up number. And this time I want to choose voice message as the format, and this is going to allow us to write rules to make phone calls and provide alerts or notifications of different things. So once you set that up, you can see everything else goes away on the screen, and it's informing you must activate by rules. So we saw with the telephones, that's one part of the setup for reporting. The other part is in the communicator section. You have several different categories here. I'm just going to hop into the zone RCs, and you'll see all the different zones that we have set up. And in the alarm pulse, we have 01. That means that it's enabled for alarms on these zones. You'll notice that it fills in the contact ID and CF for you when you have that 01 entered there. We're not going to be reporting restorals. Should we want to do that, we would need to put in a 01, and then that's going to fill in the information that we need. Same thing with the bypass. Should we want to do that, we put in 01, and you'll notice it just fills in on its own. If you need to set, like if you want to report bypasses on everything, you can right-click on the pulse at the top of that particular column and set that entire column to 01s, and that just is a quick way to get that done for you. Under System RCs, you'll find the delay for your AC failure, but what I really want to show you here is this automatic test. So we can say we want to test the communicator every 7 days at 2 a.m. So that's going to allow us to automatically send a test code to the central station so that they know that we're still able to reach them. To make that work, you do need to have the automatic test reporting code enabled with the 01, and again you can see when I put that in, it fills in the contact ID and CF for me. If you want to do user opening and closing reports, that's under user RCs. Things under area RCs are alarm cancel and abort times. You'll see there's a tab for each area. Duress, if you have duress users set up. And then of course if you have keypad panic keys, you want those to report, so you can set those up, and there's a separate tab for each keypad. So that takes us through the basics of setting up the security part of the system, so to speak. I'm going to turn it back over to Brad now to go over some of the automation stuff with you.
All right, thank you, Amy. Appreciate that information. So up to this point, everything that we've gone over so far, you could actually do through keypad programming. It would take just a little bit more time, but the keypad programming is pretty intuitive. We just feel like the ElkRP software is a much easier and quicker way of programming the system. So like I said, up to this point, setting up your zones and your telephone numbers and your users and everything could have been done through the keypad. At this point, we're at the bottom of our screen on the left-hand side. We're at the automation. And this is where the M1 really sets itself apart from other security systems in the fact that it can create life enhancement features. Automation as far as lighting, thermostats, being able to call you during certain events, just things of that nature to help improve or to help notify you of things that are going on in and around your home and so forth with your security system. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the automation task, and I'm going to go through some of these fairly quickly. First of all, under task itself, this screen here, you just give a name to a task. It actually doesn't do anything but just assign a name. And I believe earlier we mentioned garage door, so we're going to create a garage door task. The show box here allows it to show up on the Elk keypads under the automation and task menu. It also allows it to show up on the third-party apps such as M1to-Go and the smartphone apps. Now, under the voice description, you can assign a 6-word phrase to this task so that if you call into the system over your telephone, you can enter into the task menu and activate that task as well. The voice being spoken back to will speak the voice description you have assigned to that task. So up to this point, we can actually have up to 32 different tasks. And like I said, this just simply assigns a name to a task, and you want to make sure you click the show button. Under lighting control, the M1 can control a number of different lighting technologies from different manufacturers. Basically, we support up to 256 either loads or a combination of loads and scenes, depending on the manufacturer. And here you would want to give a name to your device, as well as assign the format and the type of either switch or appliance module or so forth. Unless you're using Insteon lighting, the op box will not be checked, but you would want to make sure you click the show box and assign a voice description if you like. The Outputs tab allows you to, again, assign a name to an output. And output 1 and 2 are pretty much hard-coded into the system. You really can't write many rules to do anything with these outputs. They turn on and off automatically depending on alarms and so forth. One thing in rules that you can do is you can chirp output 2 whenever, for instance, when you arm to the away mode, chirp output 2 just to let you know the system armed. Output 3 is the relay on the M1, and I'm going to give it a name, garage door. And I'm going to click the show box, and if I wanted to, I could assign a voice description, so I could use it through telephone remote control, or I could have it speak this at some point. The first 64 outputs on the M1 system can be named. After that, the output is simply output 65, 66, all the way up through 208. Sunrise-sunset settings are very important for calculating sunrise, sunset, dusk to dawn, when it's dark outside. We use this a lot in rules for lighting applications. And the way you'd want to do that, for the most part, you could enter your latitude and longitude if you like, or you can select a city near you. In this case, we're going to select Chapel Hill. Okay, we're going to use these settings, and we're going to calculate, and then I'd want to send that to the control. Now, once you set your sunrise, sunset settings and so forth, you probably won't let the system run for 24 hours to let it catch up, make sure it knows exactly when sunrise and sunset happens. So later on, when you create your rules, if for some reason it didn't fire at that time, give it 24 hours, let it cycle through sunrise, sunset, and so forth, and it should be called up. The voice description, a lot of information there. You know, the M1 system does have a 500-word voice vocabulary. It does a lot of talking. You can go into these menus and edit some of the messages that are spoken. Certain messages you may not want to edit, and that would be under the phone control, because it's instructing you if you're doing automation tasks and so forth. So I'd probably leave phone control as is, but under some of the other messages, you can adjust those and select different words and so forth. If by chance you get to a point where you've gone in and you've made a lot of changes and you say, oops, I've messed up, you can go through the keypad programming and default the messages back to factory settings and receive that back into ElkRP, and that'll restore those settings for you. Custom settings. Custom settings is probably something we should probably save for a future webinar because it's a little bit more advanced. But basically, a custom setting you can use in a rule, and this is one of the only things as far as rules are related that you can adjust through keypad. You can actually adjust a custom setting. Custom setting may be a time of day, in which case time of day, for instance, we'll call this sprinkler, and we're going to set the value to 5 a.m. And we have 20 custom settings that we can adjust. We're going to try to go over this in a rule here. Counters. We have 64 counters in the system, and a counter can be set from a value of 1 to 65,535, or it can be toggled between 0 and 1. We use the counters a lot as flags. If we want to try to do something with a single button, and we'll call this output 3 control. And we just simply give a name to the counter here. Under thermostats, once again, we're just naming the thermostat. We can call this hallway, and we can use this in rules later on. Text messages. This is a very nice feature in the M1 system in which you can create a custom text message and have that message sent out over the keypad. Let's say if you want to display somebody's birthday at a certain time, you can have happy birthday Mr. Jones, or happy birthday to your daughter, or something like that appear on the keypad on their special day, holidays and so forth. You can also create custom ASCII strings under text and have that sent out the M1 either through serial port 0, the onboard serial port, which can go to third-party equipment such as Control4 or Crestron or so forth, or through the XEP module out onto the local area network, or through our serial port expander, the M1XSP. And if there's a certain piece of equipment that we don't currently integrate with, you can use the XSP and adjust its baud rate and so forth to match the other equipment, and you can send custom ASCII strings for some limited communication back and forth between the two. Obviously, each command would require its own unique ASCII string, but you can create multiple ASCII strings and text messages within the text window here. Now, the last item here on our list is rules, and rules is a very, very powerful part of the M1 system. This is where you can really give life enhancement and create just some wonderful, unique features within the M1 system. Your imagination, you can let it run wild at this point. And to get started with rules, first thing we'd want to do, the rule engine is basically a whenever. You can condition it with an AND statement and then the then statement. Now, whenever, that's the event that triggers the rule. And under the whenever drop down here, these are events that could take place to cause a rule to activate, such as a time occurrence based upon the time of day, at sunrise, at sunset, specific hours, or you could have something happen every hour or minute or every second. You can have rules activate when a zone changes state, whether it be going secure or not secure. You can have rules activate upon an output changing state, whether it turns on or turns off. The keypad function keys, the key fob presses from your wireless remotes. Now, whether a light changes state, our automation task from earlier, you can have events take place based upon the system arming and disarming, whether it's going into alarm, a number of other options here. Miscellaneous system troubles. We can also have activate events based upon receiving text messages from third-party equipment and so forth. The counter changing or thermostat changes. Now, these are our whenevers. Each rule must have one whenever. It can't have more than one, only one. Our AND, which is a conditioning statement, you can have it based upon the time of day, day of the week, day of the month, whether it's light or dark outside based upon your SunriseSunset settings. You can have it check the state of an input or an output based upon the last person who armed or disarmed the system, whether a light is on or off, whether the security system is in an armed or disarmed or an alarm state. It's miscellaneous trouble conditions. You can have an AND statement based upon a value of a counter, the temperature of one of our temperature sensors, or a thermostat. You can have multiple AND statements within one rule. Your then statement is the event that takes place. What do you want to happen after the whenever? And those can include activating the automation task, controlling the security aspects of the system, turning on or off outputs, controlling your lighting, speaking a message, sending those text messages out the serial port, or sending that text message to a keypad. You can enable and disable the chime. You can actually beep the keypads, chirp the outside siren, that's output 2, set and change your counter values. You can dial the telephone number that's set up as a voice dial. You can send email notifications. You can adjust thermostats, actually enable or disable users. You can enable or disable the voice of the M1 system, bypass or unbypass zones, reset the smoke power, or send generic audio commands to our supported audio manufacturers. Now let's get started and create a couple simple rules here. So let's say, for instance, whenever, and we set up an automation task. So let's say, for instance, whenever automation garage door is activated, then I want to turn output 3 on for a duration of 1 second. Now output 3 in this scenario would be wired in parallel with the door controls to simulate a button press. So whenever garage door automation task 1 is activated, then turn output 3 on for 1 second. Now the automation task can be activated through the telephone remote control or the third-party apps at this point, or from the keypad. So let's say this rule is done. Now let's create, we created an access user 2 a while ago. So let's just say that whenever, and then look under security, you notice we have the access feature. And let's say it's on keypad 1. Whenever they walk up and they type in their code, now let's condition it. Let's say and relative to specific time of the day, we'll say it is later than 8 p.m. Let's say it's earlier than 5 p.m. Now what won't happen, let's disarm the system. Area 1. So whenever this person walks up to a keypad, they enter their 4-digit code. If it is later than 8 a.m. and it is earlier than 5 p.m., then disarm area 1. And that rule is done. Now let's control something using a zone. So let's say, for instance, whenever the front door becomes not secure, here's our list of zone attributes here, not secure, okay, and let's say it is dark outside, based upon our sunrise, sunset, we can click then, and we want to control a light. And we want to turn that light on. And now that rule is done. We set up an F key earlier, so let's say whenever the F key press, and I believe that was number 4 if I remember right, whenever F4, and we'll say on any keypad activates, then automation task, garage door. But we haven't assigned anything for that automation task yet. So let's do this. New, and whenever, automation task, we add that garage door task. So we click OK. And what do you want to happen when the garage door gets activated, when that task gets activated? Well, we set output 3, and we want to turn it on for a duration of 1 second. Click OK, and click Done. Oh, yes we did. I did set that up. I apologize. That's a redundant rule. Let's take that out. That's how easy it is to delete a rule. So yes, we've already set up that whenever the garage door task, so now whenever the F4 key is activated, it's coming back up here and activating this automation task. Think of an automation task as a macro. You've created the rule one time, but you can call that rule from any other rule, so to speak, so you just don't have to recreate the same thing over and over and over. All right. let's see, we had one other example. Oh yes, okay. I want to edit this one rule here for access, and this is the rule for access. I want to edit that rule real quick. Okay, I want to add another then statement. Besides disarming the system, I want to be called, so I want to then dial telephone number. I'm going to dial my number, and I'm going to speak a message, and let's see, I'll speak miscellaneous 1. We didn't assign it, but we can go back and do that later. So now, whenever access on this keypad and the time of day is between each parameters, I'm going to disarm the system, but then I want to get a phone call letting me know that the system's been disarmed. So that rule is done. Let's see. Do we have any questions about a quick example we'd like to go over real quick that might be beneficial? We're running just a little bit late on time.
Show an example of how you could disable the non-alarm voice at night and then re-enable it in the morning, like if you wanted to suppress those kind of messages overnight.
Okay. Very good, excellent. All right, so under New Rule, and we're going to go under Time Occurrence. Whenever the time of day equals, let's say it's 8 p.m., then enable, disable voice. I'm going to disable the voice. Now that rule is done. Now when I disable the voice, if the system still goes into alarm, it's going to override this rule, and it's going to have the sounders, it's going to have the voice capability. So this is just the non-alarm voice when the system is in a non-alarm state. Now once you turn off the non-alarm voice message, you have to have another rule to turn it back on. So we'll go New, whenever, once again, Time Occurrence. This time we're going to select 8 a.m. and then I want to re-enable the voice. Now that rule is done. So every day, now let's say for instance we only wanted this on the weekends. So I'm going to edit this rule, and I'm going to add another AND statement, and date is specific day of the week, Saturday and Sunday. So now at 8 p.m. and the days of the week are Saturday and Sunday, then I'm going to disable the non-alarm voice. Done. And the same is true on this one. So add another AND. Date is specific days of the week, Saturday and Sunday. Done. Alright, so you can see pretty much from the rule engine, like I said, one whenever, but then you can have multiple ANDs and multiple thens. Now when you add the AND statements, each AND statement must be true before it'll drop to the next one in the list. And then you have multiple then statements within the same rule.
We are running out of time here, but I did want to address a couple of questions really quickly. We had a question about an access user and what that is compared to a normal user, and so hopefully maybe that was cleared up a little bit in Brad's example here with the access rule. So when you have a user that has the access option selected, it can trigger a whenever access rule and allow you to perform the different functions as Brad showed here in his example. Another question is about the controllable light on ELK's motion detectors and how that works. Those can be controlled through rules, and it's done using outputs 4, 5, and 6. And you can read more details on exactly what's going to happen when you activate those different outputs in the installation instructions for that motion detector, which you'll find online. We have some other resources available on our website and our YouTube channel as far as like digging into rules more, learning more about some of the other stuff that in the RP software that we weren't able to show you today, so definitely check that stuff out. We will be sending a follow-up email to you early next week that will include a recording of this webinar and some of those resources I just mentioned. I want to thank Brad for being with us here today and doing such a great job as usual. You're the man, Brad, and I hope everybody has a good weekend.
All right, thanks everyone for attending today. And remember, ElkProducts.com. If you have any questions, tech support at ElkProducts.com. We look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day.